Hello and welcome along to this week's edition of the Clare Champion Sports Chat podcast. Just to let people know, I know there was a lot of lads getting in touch last night to know why wasn't the podcast out on Monday. Because the championship draws for the next couple of weeks are on a Monday night, we said we'd wait until Tuesday and be able to bring those draws to you in a little bit more detail. So set the alarms for Tuesday evenings at 7 o'clock for the next couple of weeks, and we'll bring you all those details. As you can see, fresh from makeup here again, Peter O'Connell and Fergie O'Loughlin. Fergie told me that I finally accepted the receding, and he says it makes me look like a man to have shaved the head. So Fergie, you're the inspiration. I just want to put it on record. Thank you.
Lovely. Looking well.
Thanks.
Yeah, you'll be brushing back the eyebrows now just to make sure it's...
there's the smoke head in your man beside us instead of the full head. But anyway,
Blackrock Clinic.
Let's move on quick. Turkey, I thought it was that new place. Senior Hurling Championship down to the last 8 after the weekend's action. We've got that quarter-final draw. We've got Feakle versus Aina Kilnamona, Cratloe versus Clonlara, Erogue versus The Bridge, and Crusheen versus Ballier. Fergie, we'll go to yourself quickly on this first. Any major surprises in those round 3 games? Did everything kind of pan out as we thought it would?
No, the Clooney Quinn Feakle one really was my most surprising one. Really, I thought, having seen Clooney Quinn, and we did mention it, the performance against Ballier, the performance against Clarecastle, and taking into account that they were playing an average poor Clarecastle team. But the way they executed their game that day, and the way Feakle fell asunder in the second half, scoring 1 point against Crusheen, I was expecting Clooney Quinn to get over the line on that one, but it didn't work out. And I suppose the other one, was the Kilmaley and Cratloe one. 13 minutes, you'd say it's going to be hammering for Cratloe, and from 13 minutes onwards, the absolute falling asunder of Kilmaley, for whatever reason it was probably the most two talking points of the weekend. And again, very lackluster, no intensity, poor championship really to date. The Cratloe and Kilmaley game Sunday morning, it was over the far side of the stand. There was no atmosphere, and it was just so dead. And I think there's a major call out for a restructuring of the championship in Clare.
Really? Because I think we would have... It came, obviously, the football structure that's there previously was the hurling structure that was now adopted. Your 16 teams, 8 first-round games, and so on from there. Is it more the quality of hurling than the structure that needs to be looked at, you think? Because there's something on every game in this particular structure. Yeah,
it's hard to put your finger on it, but I really liked the structure going back a few years back when you had 8 in Senior A and 8 in Senior B. 4 came out of each. Top 2 in Senior B went into Senior B final and went into quarterfinals in the proper championship. I think there was more cut in it. And there was even games in it. Some of the games are just completely one-sided, and especially when the safety net is there in the system at the moment.
The round 2 games.
We're seeing very, very poor standards. I just think a real in-depth look to it. If you're a county manager at a lot of the games over the last maybe 6 weekends, you'd be scratching your head wondering, Jesus, where am I going to get freshness? Where am I going to get new players from? Where's the intensity? And a lot of the county players, to me, playing averagely to poorly. So to be worrying time for me in the hurling front of that, I don't think there's a real buzz about the championship.
Is it because, Fergie, that across Clare, across the country, club is not as prevalent as we would all like it to be? That you play your league, you might have county players, you mightn't. There's just not the same emphasis on league, whether it be Clare Cup or in football QC Cup as there would have been years ago, and bit by bit that has kind of led to maybe a slight drop off in standards. Like whoever wins the championship in Clare would probably still compete well in Munster, but beneath the top 3 or 4.
Yeah, I look at, and this is a discussion we've often had about the club scene, and I think the complete and utter disregard for the club scene across the front. It's very, very difficult. You're involved, Peter, in a team. I've been involved in a few teams in Clare, and it's so difficult, not alone as a management, you can imagine as a player, to keep the momentum going, to keep the interest going, to keep lads alive, to keep them fit. Like you're playing really realistically, you're playing half the year for nothing. It's very hard to keep lads focused, tuned in, and keep them really, really interested in the championship. And it really needs to be looked at. And I know this has been bet up and down, has been talked about in forums, but the club scene is dying a death in front of us. It's really dying a death in front of us, and it's really, really hammering home to me over the last number of weeks watching, especially the Clare Senior Hurling Championship. It's so boring. It's so poor.
Of all the teams to get to the quarterfinal, Fergie, Feakle probably, would you say they've overachieved, or is it a bit of a surprise? I mean, they've reacted so well to losing that previous game, and as you said, beating Clooney Quinn without a couple of players that are out injured as well.
Yeah,
they've definitely made the most of their resources.
100%. Like if Feakle had come with a full complement on any given day, you'd be giving them a chance. You know, I saw them in the intermediate championship last year with Broadford in the bridge. We saw them, you know, in a very, very good Broadford team. I'd be expecting Broadford to come up this year. They have a very, very good team, and they've, you know, to see the way Feakle and Broadford went at it, them 2 or 3 days below in the bridge, you know, you'd say there is a lot of quality there. But you're right, this year especially with so many players missing, you know, coming from a small pick, and the performance against Crusheen for 30 minutes in the second half, you know, you would have thought would have buried them, but they really bounced back. But the other thing I'd say in Clooney Quinn, they're scratching their heads really, you know. I think a lot of stuff that happened, like again, you know, Feakle, and it's something that we've spoken about from the off, like Feakle full back, like I've stated it, like, and forewarned is forearmed in situations, and I think Feakle really exploited it. You know, Clooney Quinn have the best fullback in the county over the last number of years, and Shane McNamara silent. And I've experienced that over my 3 years there. He's an excellent fullback. And playing him out in the centre, I think, takes him out of his best position, takes Fergal Lynch from a really, really great position that I love playing him in as a target man full forward, back into a position of full back. I think it's criminal, being honest.
And Killian Duggan at full forward, I think. Is Killian not a ready-made defender?
A ready-made defender. And you know, for the success, if you want to call that, of getting to a county final and winning the Senior B the year before with Clooney Quinn, in its own merit, the Senior B, and a lot of people were criticising that win and how important was for Clooney Quinn. It was a vital win in the Senior B, because then the trophy in 74 years. So, you know, for anybody just to throw that out the window and say, I thought it was a major stepping stone in winning the Senior B that year to give us. And Killian Duggan was one of our real stalwarts in that half back line. You know, with Conor Harrison sitting back in the pocket and playing with Shane Mack behind him, and with Brian McInerney and Rory Mack. Like, it was a solid 5 to 6 backs we had, you know, I wouldn't have dismantled that. No, you know, different managements go in, but Dave Barry was with me, and I'd be very disappointed in the way they structured their team, you know, and it was probably one of their faults in their downfall. You know, if you have to be fair and honest, in when you analyse it, and I'm sure they're scratching their heads. And you know, even I think Raymond Ben, you know, did serious damage inside full forward, and Fergal was left on him for the period that he was doing that. So they'll be scratching their heads and wondering, you know, the Feakle win in its merit. They were spirited, they were hungry. You know, I mentioned in my article in previewing it that 2017 would have been in the front of their minds going into this game again, and they showed real spirit, Feakle, and yeah, you know, deservingly are in the quarter final, and they'll be difficult now.
Yeah, it was almost a mirror image as well, wasn't it? That late goal for Feakle sealing it, like the late goal had come, you know, the couple of years previously. Right. A couple of general questions, lads, to get your thoughts on coming out of this weekend. Right, we've touched on one of them. A couple of years ago, 20 senior hurling teams were reduced to 16. In our football championship, 16 was reduced to 12 and eventually went to 13 with the amalgamation coming in. Are there 16 senior competitive hurling teams in Clare, or have we to look at another cull?
There's definitely not 16 senior hurling teams in Clare. There's definitely not. And look at the championship. Go through the results over the last 2 to 3 years since the new system has come into place. There's definitely not 16. You know, and I'd argue, is there 12? You know, being honest, I think you would have a massive senior A, massive senior B, and you'd have a fantastic intermediate championship. Do you know, you get the winners out of each of those. I think most of your games through those championships, A, B, and intermediate, will be very, very strong. The games will be worthwhile going to.
Would you go along with that, Peter?
Yeah, I was at one of the relegation semi-finals, Whitegate and the Mills, and Whitegate were... I've seen Whitegate twice this year. The first game against Cratloe, they scored those 4 goals in the first half, and Cratloe ended up scoring 29 points. But Whitegate in that game showed an awful lot. They showed they're very good forwards, and one thing that their forwards do above any team that I've seen in the championship this year, their forwards work very, very hard when the other team have the ball. And against the Mills there at the weekend, Whitegate did not look like one of the worst 4 teams in Clare. I'd be stunned if there's... I mean, they did get a tough enough draw first round, Cratloe, and then they were hammered in by Kilmaley in the second round and didn't compete at all in that game. So you would think after that kind of a hammering, a bit like what you were saying about Feakle, you would think maybe that's it for Whitegate. But they were absolutely... They were excellent. They've got... Paul Burke inside in full forward line scored 3 goals. Colin Burke played well. Tommy Holland centre forward. I suppose my point is, sometimes you might end up in a relegation semi-final and maybe worse teams got into round 3 because they got a handier draw.
Yeah.
No, the Mills, definitely going by the way they played at the weekend, are not a senior team. I saw Tulla playing the first round against Island Kilnamona. They're not a senior team.
Where have the Mills gone from last year, guys?
It's incredible, isn't it?
It's an incredible turnaround that they were in the semi-final and they were competitive against Ballier. And again, we mentioned it in our analysing of the game afterwards, that if they'd got their matchups right and if they had a specific game plan that really didn't suited them to such, but really tried to cull the Ballier influences, they were in with a great chance. I think they were only beaten 4 or 5 points by Ballier that day.
Yeah,
it's an amazing turnaround.
It's so interesting, and even you'd be thinking about it from a management point of view. They must be better than that, than what they've shown this year. But they just the game last Saturday above in Broadford, it was as if they were playing a challenge game. They rose it once or twice. Maybe for about 6 or 7 minutes in the second half, they got it back to 6 points. But Whitegate were just way more driven. They were just ravenous, and they wanted to win that game. Maybe, I don't know, did the Mills think we're better than them? They'll put it up to us, but we'll beat them eventually, or something. I don't know. They were just a way off.
Well, I suppose there's a couple of ways of looking at it. One is it kind of slippery slope syndrome, in that your confidence is shot to pieces, obviously, particularly from Mill's point of view. Semi-final last year, now into that relegation semi-final on both sides. And you look at Tulla, Clarecastle have been in 2 relegation finals in recent times. Whitegate have been battling for their lives in recent times, and I suppose we predicted it in the paper that we thought Tulla might come through that. We thought Whitegate were going to come through just from that experience point of view. So is it the teams that are better able to adapt mentally at that end of the championship that kind of hold the whip hand?
Yeah, it has an awful lot got to do with it. Again, you just mentioned a few things there. 2016, Clooney Quinn played the Mills in the Senior B final outside in Tulla in a very, very good game. Clooney Quinn wins it. Clooney Quinn goes on the following year, gets to county final. The Mills win the Senior B in 2017, gets on 2018, goes to a county semi-final. Now, you can't explain how they're in a relegation final a year later with that progress. If it was a third round defeat, you'd say, okay, it's a drop down from last year, but to go down to the end of the pile, and there's a pile that's going to be a savage relegation final.
There's going to be more interest in that game than there is in any of the quarterfinals.
It's similar to the Feakle, probably a Clarecastle game 2 years ago. Do you know? And you'll be talking about draws, and you're right, Peter, you're 100% right. And you look at the Clarecastle draw this year, the Bridge in the first round and Clooney Quinn in the second round. There were 2 awful difficult draws for Clarecastle. If they got it maybe a lesser one, I'm not saying they might have won it, but Do you know, it was a very, very two difficult draws for them.
But how did Clarecastle? I didn't see that. I don't know. Did you see the Clarecastle game? How did Clarecastle then go from? I think most people were thinking that they're going to go down, and suddenly they produce, one big performance. Were Tulla so poor, or did Clarecastle lift it a good bit?
There's a bit of both. Like, I think Tulla, and again, they had such a good start to the Clare Cup. Tulla, I think they were raising eyebrows around the county. They started, I think, that 4 wins in the first rounds in the Clare Cup. Take it for what the Clare Cup is, but at least there was signs of, and then it was just. I think Tulla are in serious trouble, and if you look at again, look at the way the matches went. Wolf Tones beat Tulla by a goal in a very close contest, and you see what Bellier has done to Wolf Tones. Right, licking. You see what Clarecastle beating Tulla by 6-7 points, pulling up, missed a lot of chances, below the bridge. So there's a massive gulf. I think Tulla are in serious trouble now. I suppose it will all depend on what reaction that the Mills are going to get. It's going to be a righties Clare derby out there, and wherever it's going to be played. But there's going to be serious. But you go back to the Clarecastle thing, Peter. Sorry, it's a bit Jekyll and Hyde with Clarecastle. It's only when they're in the corner. See the performance that they got against Feakle in the relegation final. I don't know, was it 16 or 17 points? Absolutely hockeyed them off the field. That performance wasn't seen all year. So there is potential there. It's what it.
But that must be even more frustrating, like, because if you can do that in a real pressure game, relegation final in that case, relegation semi-final last weekend.
Yes.
There's something wrong then somewhere. Like, it's either the players or management. Like, why can't they get to that level? First round of the championship, or you might have one bad day, like, but even second round.
Yeah.
Now I know the draw, as you said, was.
Yeah, it was a difficult draw.
In fairness, we have to take that into account.
Yeah, it was a difficult draw. Yeah, and as I said, we haven't been in the wilderness when it comes down to underage. We 4 minors won the last 10 years, 21B won, so there is potential for real competitiveness in the senior championship, but it hasn't delivered. And again, it's something I've spoken about over the last number of years. You look at the real big clubs over the, say, 10 years ago onwards, Bearfield, Wolf Tones, Clarecastle, they were all big clubs going back 10 or 15 years ago. Massive developments came on in their clubs. Them 3 clubs now are really struggling. Now, they're at the other side of the developments, but I think there was probably a major lack of focus in what the club should have been really about. Absolutely. Finance is important, facilities are awful important, and money has to be raised. It's down here that, if you drop them coaching standards and them coaching levels, you're going to pay the price. And I think them 3 clubs have paid the price for massive developments in their clubs, but they haven't got the balance of the coaching right, and they've slipped back down in the ranks. Now, Bearfield are coming a little bit again, probably with underage, a good 16 team 2 years ago, good minor team, so they're coming again. So, but probably it's something that a real look at in clubs where I've often said this, where I think the finances, the facilities should be dislocated from the real most important part, and that's the coaching and the structures of the coaching system within clubs, to make sure that clubs, the likes of Clarecastle, the likes of Wolf Tones, the likes of Bearfield, that their standards don't drop in the coaching levels. Would that be fair?
Yeah, I suppose one of the issues there is, if you're like Clarecastle are in an urban setting, Dura Bearfield is largely an urban club as well. Wolf Tones the same. Like, you're competing for children, you're competing for parents as well, and if they, I suppose if your facilities aren't fairly good and aren't comparable or even better than, whatever the local rugby facilities are, or local soccer, or if you're living in Shannon, you've access to Limerick City, to all kinds of sports, that maybe you might lose out in that respect if the facilities aren't good enough. I think you probably have to balance both, like, but I do agree with you, like, that the one thing that you should be tipping the balance in favour of is the hurling side of it, or the football side of it, making sure that gets precedence, and that too much of a focus isn't on developing facilities. I suppose if you look at the likes of Cratloe, they have a fine hall down there and all that. But they've one field, isn't it? And they've produced a lot of great players out of that field.
We in Clarecastle, we were probably one of the most successful teams going back in the 70s and the 80s and lesser in the 90s, but very, very competitive. We Clarebby, we 22 teams between camogie, hurling, football, a little bit of ladies football thrown in, working out at Clarebby. But we were really up there at the top. And I think that's the key, is getting that balance right of you have your facilities, yes, great, absolutely, you're able to compete with whatever level of sport comes your way, and especially when you are coming from the little urban settings that you have attractions in Innis with soccer and rugby and little cricket games now being played here and there, and it's important to make sure the facilities are top class, but you cannot lose the focus on what you're really, really about.
Like, do you lose something as a club if you go from kind of basic facilities, we'll call it, to very, very good? I mean, the facilities in Clarecastle are excellent, like Gortine, fantastic. But do you lose something if things get a bit too, professional? That's kind of it seems like a silly point, but
no, it's not.
Do you lose a bit of?
You do.
I don't know. I can't put my finger on it, but
you do. You lose the focus on what you're about, I think, because so much energy goes in to, firstly, the fundraising of a top class facilities. Then probably everybody wants to have a piece of that, wants to be involved in that, because they want their names associated to the great development, and I was a part of that, and that will always be there. But the under 12 team mightn't always be recognised 5 years later or 6 years later of the work that's been done by a lot of people. With some people it will be, and you do lose your focus on what you're really, really about as a club, and it's a very good point. And I think clubs need to get that balance right, and the facts of it are there. The proof of it is there in front of us, of the big clubs come back 10 to 15, 20 years ago, have now declined, but they've excellent facilities. It's getting the balance of it right is definitely the key. And you're right, the focus goes, Peter. The focus goes on what the club is really, really about, I think.
Yeah, it's one to be watched, no doubt. We're going to take a very, very quick break here on the Champion Sports Chat podcast. Loads more to get to, including that team of the decade that we've been flagging on social media. Needless to say, there's not a whole pile of agreement between the three lads here in the room in terms of who should be where. Do join us again for that just after these. Now, welcome back to the second part of this week's Clare Champion Sports Chat podcast. We're about to start fighting because the first half was just all that little bit too cosy. We were agreeing on everything, and where's the crack in that? We decided a couple of weeks ago, seeing as that a lot of the national teams of the decade are now being picked. We're nearing the business end of our club championships here in Clare, obviously down to quarter-final stage in hurling, and we will be next weekend down to quarter-final stage in football. So we put the thinking caps on and said we'd try and come up with the best club team. So bear in mind, this is club form, nothing to do with the county, so 2013 doesn't bear any arguments in that of the last decade. So from 2010 up to 2019, myself and Fergie has some pre-production work done on this. I know a good lot of you have gone in touch on Twitter as well. We're going to carry it over just to give you some more time to get involved before we narrow it down to a definitive 15. But for the moment, Fergie, as we mentioned, we've been having a good old natter about this as we wanted. We're disagreeing on a few positions, so that's what makes the selection committee meeting all that more interesting, I guess. Firstly, I suppose overall in the decade, you're probably looking at Crusheen, Six Mile Bridge, Ballier, Cratloe. They're probably the big teams that dominated the stories in terms of winning championships and all that went with it, weren't they? Yeah, definitely. They're the four, and the other talking point would be, I suppose, Clonera not winning as many as they should have won over the decade, with the players that they've had. So you're probably talking, I suppose, the Bridge being the real team over the decade, really, that have really set the light on fire. Crusheen, the only team that have put back-to-back ones, and Ballier, I suppose, women, that first big famous one, and so look at it's really interesting to see where you're coming from on a few of your players. I suppose Ballier in the Munster and All-Ireland story probably stole a lot of the headlines as well, didn't they? I know it's only the two championships compared to, we'll say, three for the Bridge, and who knows how this year is going to pan out, but does that put them on a bigger pedestal, do you think, in terms of achievement? Yeah,
I think coming from the base where they've come from, you know, and you know, we do associate 6 Mile Bridge down through the years. You know, 6 Mile Bridge will never be out of the picture because of the amount of great work to do with underage and the coaching that they have. The coaching infrastructure they have below is absolutely second to none, and I really admire them for that. And they're really never going to be out of the picture. But where Ballyea came from, you know, in the things. But again, you know, in every team you have a class player like Tony Kelly, you know, a player like Niall Deasy, a player like Jack Brown, a player like Gudgie O'Connell, a player like Paul Flanagan. Like, there are 6 massive quality hurlers in the club team, and you know, when they did make the breakthrough and win the county championship, you always knew that they were going to be very, very competitive at Munster level, because most teams are in it because of the style of play we play and, you know, all that. But yeah, I think that was a massive achievement.
I think Ballyea winning the second one was really confirmed. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, you have to be a good team to win one championship. In fairness, you can never be lucky to win a county championship, but to do it the second time with more or less half the team that they had in the All-Ireland Club final.
Yeah, there were 6,
you know, I mean,
6 of the county, or 6 of the team that won the county final,
and,
you know, 2 years previous.
You know, the players you mentioned there are fantastic hurlers, but you still need very, very good club hurlers to be able to win a championship. You know, to back up the
100%.
the big, you know, the lads that
you know, just taking 3 offhand of Cathal Doohan, Gudgie and Stanley Neen. Take those 3 just for a second out of that team that had won a county championship with him, would have been 3 massive players from any other team. But the phenomenal thing again, and just not for the sake of repeating it, it's the TKF dominance on the second one. You know, 333, 233 from play from the middle of the field. It'll never be seen again. It probably was one of the best individual performances over a championship that we'll probably ever see, unless he matches it again. And
just on a slightly different note, Fergie, earlier on we were talking about clubs maybe sometimes putting too much emphasis on facilities. I mean, the Bridge have superb facilities down there, and they haven't taken the focus off the coaching. They're still producing exceptionally good hurlers at all levels, you know. So I suppose it can be done. You can develop your facilities and not forget that you're, you know, primarily judged on what you do on the hurling field.
100%. And like they would have a top committee down there, you know, and anybody that would know Petty Meehan would know where you lie, where you stand. He's no messing chairman, and he can get it all right. He can get the balance of
building and
the structures of the club and the coaching structure of the club right. And I where I really do, and when credit is need to be given to Ballyea or to 6 Mile Bridge, you know, they're great rivals of ours in Clarecastle, and anytime I've been with any other team in Clare and we've played them, I've had awful rivalry with them. But you have to admire them. You just have to admire them. For what they bring to the gig and the professionalism in all sectors. Yeah,
let's get into the team, lads, because I'm conscious that we need time to go through this. Fergie, who's your goalie?
It has to be Donald Tuohy. Donald Tuohy has been the best goalkeeper, I think, in Clare over the last number of years, being consistent, and I suppose the proof of that is that, you know, he's been on the Clare senior hurling team probably on the performance of his club championship. So I would say Donald Tuohy.
And while it was at the start of the decade, it can't be forgotten that while Ballyea did 2 and 3, the Bridge did 3 and 5, Crusheen did 2 and 2, and they're the last team to do it in what has been a ferociously competitive Clare championship in the last couple of years. I mean, that achievement is one that shouldn't be forgotten either, isn't it?
100%. Like we spoke about it recently, putting the back-to-back ones, how difficult it is for teams to do it, and Crusheen have been one of those teams to have done it. And Tuohy has been very instrumental in that. You know, I remember, you know, again going back to my time in Clooney Quinn, even when we were playing him in the cup, we played him in the championship game in the park. You know, my focus as being involved in the team was, a lot of it was, apart from getting the matchups right, was trying to curb the influence of Donald Tuohy with the puck outs. With his, you know, with his shot stopping was very, very good, with his organisation of his backs in front of him. And I think, you know, like all goalkeepers, I suppose they can be a little bit kamikaze at times. He is that. You have to be meant to play in goal, as far as I'm concerned. But he has a major influence in the Crusheen team, and I think without a shadow of a doubt, he's one of the ones that is nailed on.
Yeah, so we can agree on that. Put that to bed. Donald Toohey, over the last decade, certainly the goalkeeper that stands out above all else. Right, Fergie, let's move on to your full back line and we'll trash that one out.
Yeah, I'm going for Alan Brigdale in one corner again. The Crusheen influence is very sticky cornerback, good cornerback. I'm going for Shane McNamara, silent, that should have been playing full back for Clooney Quinn in full back, and I'm going for Jack Brown in the other corner. Again, I've known Shane, I've seen Shane playing even when I wasn't my period in Clooney Quinn. I think he was the most consistent full back I've seen. He got a spell with Inter-County. Seen a little bit unlucky that he didn't get more of a go, I thought, maybe in the early days with the county scene. Got a little spin in the National League game, came on and was caught for a little bit of pace at one stage in the game, but came off cold off the bench. But as for a club player, I think he's been the most consistent full back around. And Jack Brown, speaks for itself with Ballyea and with the county. Yeah,
we're agreed 2 out of 3 on those. I've Brigdale and Jack in the corners, but I've Cathal Dillon on the edge of the square. Yeah. It was interesting when we first mooted this idea. Now, obviously, Owen Ryan is a colleague of us here in the Champion as well, a fanatical Crusheen man. And a conversation started online that you could nearly have a separate competition for the best 6 Crusheen backs. Not to talk of the best 6 backs in the county. So it's probably no surprise that they would be up there as well.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. Look at when you asked me to think about the team selection, Cathal Dillon was first one that came into my head as a defender, either as a full back or he played a good bit of his turn out in the wing as well. He's versatile, but I'm just giving the nod to silent to Shane Mack on this one.
Okay, it's not too bad. We've 4 gone and we're just disagreeing on the one.
Huh? Yeah. Peter, have you any?
Well, I've the half back line. No, I wouldn't agree with that, but I know, keep going.
Right, half back line so far. This will be interesting now.
Okay, I'm going with Gudgie number 5, Cian Dillon number 6, and Shane O'Morey number 7.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, Peter, you had a glimpse at that and you didn't like it.
No, I mean, look, it's hard to argue with it, but I do think in the Bison Cratloe has been exceptionally consistent over the entire 10 years that we're talking about. Now, Gudgie, I think anyone involved in a team would want Gudgie on their team, but I'd edge in the boys there.
We're talking like we've argued about this, and while I'm a huge fan of Gudgie, both on and off the field, fantastic guy. If we're looking at consistency, Gudgie has probably he hasn't played the last couple of years, and we'd love to see him playing, obviously, but he's been in the States and he's been hurling away over there. But I suppose just for consistency across the decade, the 3 in the half back line that I went with were Paddy Fitz from the Bridge. I mean, if you captain your club to a championship, that's a big thing. Obviously, Cian Dillon, we can all agree on, fabulous player, should probably still be playing county. That's a whole other debate. I think Cayman Murray has been a very, very solid guy as well in the back for the Bridge with those 3 championships too.
Yeah, look at there's a case for all of those, and more so a major case for Paddy Fitz, because in the Bridge, Paddy Fitz has been used as their main marker on every other difficult forward that any other team has come, and he's done reasonably. He again, the versatility of him. In the replay in 2017, like, he was assigned to mark Peter Duggan in the replay, and followed him all over the field and did a reasonably good job on him, and he's done that with many teams that the Bridge have kind of identified a real threat to them in the opposing team as forwards, and he's done that very well. Versatile, he can go in full back, go in the corner, go on the wing, can play centre back, so there would be a major case for him playing there, but I just think that Shane O'Morey on the wing has been one of the Bridge's better players. He gives them real energy. He gives them, not alone as a wing back, he gives them an attacking form when he starts at wing back. I just think he's very good. And look at, I have a great graph for the Gudgie. I just think he, I don't think Ballyea would be where they are only for Gudgie.
Yeah.
And that's why, again, probably it's a little bit personal as well, because I know him fairly well and I've dealt with him, but he's a great fella, and I think Ballyea's rise to the level where they are now, even though he's missed a county championship medal, is because of Gudgie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of good players at number 6. I mean, Cian Dillon would be my choice, but Conor Ryan, had a few great years for Cratloe, and I think Cayman Murray, I think you have to play him at 6. He, like, it's either 6 or nowhere, I would think.
Well, it's like the typical all-star team. We're trying to squeeze them in. Maybe positions don't mean as much as they should. I
think Shane O'Morey has to be on the team.
Yeah.
either wing back or maybe in the middle.
Yeah, well, interesting you say that. Let's move on to the midfield, because we can all agree Tony Kelly nailed on number 8. Let's park that one, done and dusted. I've Shayna Murray midfield with Tony, because like Peter said, he had to be in there somewhere, and Shayna does operate around the middle to her quite a bit as well, so maybe it's a bit of shoehorning going on, but Shayna had to be in there for me.
Yeah, I just think he's an out-and-out defender, Shayna. like I've spoken about, you know, I saw him playing one of his best games of his life above in Croke Park at Connorback for the Clare Miners. 2010. I thought it was the most outstanding display I ever saw from a defender in my life. No sweepers in front of him, had to deal with a one-on-one situation. It's a very, very good player that he was marking on that day and was outstanding that day.
It often struck me, Fergie, why wasn't he left cornerback
It's
for the count and let develop into
correct.
one of the best cornerbacks in the country?
100%, and I've often had this argument, and I go back to the 2010 with many people, and you're right, I just can't understand why he hasn't been a nailed-on cornerback for us at senior level now over the last maybe 6 or 7 years.
Because I think he's been played, you know, in so many different positions that maybe he loses that real defensive instinct you need in the corner. But I remember that day above in Croke Park. It reminded me of the two Lohans back in '95. Every time the ball went in, they seemed to be coming out with it. Every time the ball went in that day, Shayna Murray was coming out with it.
Yeah, he's lightning fast. How fast and all you need to be as a corner forward. You need to double that by 2 as a cornerback, in my estimation, that your recovery, ball in behind you, ball in front of you over that 5 or 10 yards. He's actually explosive pace is unbelievable. And it's a very good point, Peter, and I've often argued this, that, you know, we should be really, really saying that he's a nailed-on cornerback over the last number of years for us, because it has been a thorny little issue for us, hasn't it? Inside in the corner,
Definitely,
like, you know, we've seen swappings and changes, and we've seen us being, you know, often at times we've seen us being in trouble with good corner forwards. So it's a very, very, very good point.
Let's move on. Time is running out, Fergie. Who wears 9 on your team?
Tony Kelly wears the 9 on my team.
Right.
And the 8 is Colm Galvin.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, you know, I just think that he's an outstanding player. I take into account that Clonlara probably haven't achieved what they should have had achieved, but I just think his performances at club level, to me, you know, over the last decade has been very, very good. In and out at times, not 100%. You know, they call him Galvin. We see his time, but to me, he's been the outstanding midfielder.
Okay, that's our 1 to 9. The front 6 we can almost rattle through, because there's actually consensus on this. The half forward line: Peter Duggan, Colin Ryan, and Niall Deasy. All for various reasons, all very deserving of it. Obviously, you're going along with that. And our inside line: Conor McGrath, John Conlon, and Niall Gilligan. I don't think there's anybody would disagree with any of those 6. There's an awful lot unlucky not to be in there. If you go down the honourable mentions route, we could be here for the next 3 hours talking about
I'd have Colin McInerney in there.
Really?
Yeah.
In place of?
Probably Conlon.
No.
Like, Conlon has been very consistent. We know what he is. He's a fantastic hurler, but Colin McInerney, I don't know, I'd have been in there somewhere.
See, that's the problem. If we could stretch it out to 20 a side, it might be a bit happier. Like,
no, I definitely say Conlon by a mile in front of him. And you must remember, Conlon missed a year for Clonlara playing centre back. You know, and the madness of that. For a year centre back, the best forward in the county at the time, probably in the country at the time, was reverted to centre back. But he's definitely a nailed on 14, Peter.
I mean, look, it's hard to argue with him. I've great time for him, but I just think, I'd call McInerney.
See, there's another side of this as well, in that next week we're going to be going through a football 15, and not to forward set it too much, but obviously Colin McInerney features there. Liam Markham is a guy that could easily be in that half-back line for Hurling as well. Liam is obviously a fantastic footballer as well, and we've got Podge and all that comes with it as well. And just conscious that we spoke about Cratloe, maybe just won that one championship in the decade, contested the final last year, and looking down through it, probably only have Conor McGrath in it. I mean, it's probably tough on them as well if that's going to be the selection, isn't it?
It is, and you know, a lot of the Cratloe team came into my head as I was putting names down, but none of them, bar Conor McGrath, absolutely said nailed on, no other questions. There can't be an argument with that. Like, you could argue you're right in the bias, you could argue it, but Shannon Moore is probably better than him. You can argue Cathal McInerney, but is John Conlon or Niall Gilligan over the 10 years better than than Cathal McInerney? Yeah, you Conor Ryan, definitely. Conor Ryan was an outstanding club player, an outstanding county player, but you could argue, would you put him in instead of Cian Dillon? At 6.
And again, if you look at consistency, obviously Conor fantastic, but unfortunately, illness cut short what should have been another 6-7 years easy at county level on top of that, and maybe and a lot more with it, really.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think the 6 forwards, I'd say the consensus, unless we've missed something, and somebody will pop up with some name that might say there's an argument there, but I think they've been probably the 6 best forwards in the county club level over the last 10 years.
Yeah, that's our 1 to 15. So folks, we'll pop them up online. You can fight over it and disagree with us and pick them apart. That's what they're there for, just to create a bit of debate. There's no water for crystal going to be gained out of this or anything. It's just a bit of fun over the decade. And as I mentioned, next week then as well, we're also going to be having a chat about the best 15 in terms of the football championship, and our special guest in studio as well will be Donny Garrihy, the St. Brickens current manager, obviously a double Oscar trainer, soccer winning manager with Clare as well, so we're really looking forward to having him here in front of the cameras and on the podcast next week. To Fergie and Peter, thanks very much, and as always Sean behind the camera as well, the man that makes us look as good as we are and a little bit better as well. If you see us down the street in Innis, you'd certainly agree with that. From all of us here on the Champions Sports Champ podcast, do pick up the paper on Thursday, loads in it for you to enjoy, and we'll talk to you again next week.